Hey guys, this is Alondra Chapman, and I am a mother, wife, an entrepreneur, and an athlete. And today I want to welcome you to my YouTube channel, Gently Fierce. I have a wonderful friend of mine who is joining us, and I will let him introduce himself. All right, welcome, Derek.
Hey, what's up, Alondra? Thank you for having me on. Great to see you.
Yay, great to
Uh,
see you.
yeah. So, for a quick intro on myself, my name's Derek Joe. Won the Natural Olympia 3 years in a row, so reigning champ there for the Classic Physique division. I'm a personal trainer, online fitness coach. I work with a lot of athletes as well. I'm repping my brand here with Hype, got the logo going. So that's been a huge part of everything I've been doing the last couple of years.
Okay, awesome. Now, where are you residing now?
So right now I'm in Henderson, Nevada, so like Las Vegas, Henderson area. Originally
Okay,
from down in Tucson, but I've been out here the last couple of years.
how you liking the weather? I guess it's
Uh,
not too different, yeah?
yeah, not different from what I grew up with. It's different desert. It's a little windier out here, but still still inconsistent weather. So, but yeah, it's hot for sure. Starting to warm up a little bit now.
Okay. Well, it's actually raining here. I'm very much done with the rain for this season, but I definitely like the sun, so I need to come visit you.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I agree.
Okay, so tell me a little bit about your background as far as athletics go.
Oh, so yeah, athletics. I mean, I've pretty much grown up with sports, like all through grade school, very active, middle school, basketball in high school, football, basketball, and track. So, three-sport athlete in high school.
Hmm.
I played college football for 2 years at the junior college level. And then I also coached at the junior college level for 2 years after that.
Nice.
And fast forward a little bit, that's when I got into bodybuilding, a few years after, college.
So
So that's
what drew you to bodybuilding?
it was the competition aspect. I actually had a friend of mine who had competed in the INBA specifically as a natural bodybuilder. So he had been doing that since, his senior in high school. And, I was honestly getting a little, I don't want to say depressed, but I was just, losing motivation because I wasn't playing college football anymore. And,
Okay.
sport was such a big part of my life, my entire life. So to not have that, it was definitely like an empty feeling. And he was like, dude, you should compete. You should do a show. You already have, the physique for it. You just need to work on the diet nutrition aspect to get lean enough to be stage ready. So I thought about it a while, jumped on stage for the first time at the age of 26. And I definitely wasn't lean enough, but I saw how lean a lot of those guys were. And being as competitive as I am, I was like, okay, I know I can do better than this. So from there, it just became a journey of, me reaching my own natural potential and pushing myself to those physical limits.
So what was your first show? What was that show?
So it was actually, I forget the title of it. It was an OCB show. I remember it was out in Phoenix. Trying to remember the name of it. But yeah, it was through the OCB, and I actually competed in bodybuilding because they didn't have classic physique division yet. I don't think in any organization, not even the NPC at that time. So I did bodybuilding. So I was probably competing against some bigger guys at that time. But I got second to last place. I got like fifth or sixth place at that show. Very first show.
But the
Posing,
competition kept you going, right?
I was like, oh my god, I can't let this happen. I'm not used to this.
Yeah, exactly. I understand that drive. You don't win, and there's a
Yeah,
little edge that just makes you push a little bit harder.
I'm not in the top five. I'm like, that's not a good feeling. So yeah, I had to do better and do it right too. I didn't have a coach at that time. I didn't know much about bodybuilding. I was pretty much just a football player on stage at that point.
Okay.
Um, so yeah, it's a lot more to it than that, of course. So it took some time to dial things in and actually be able to afford a coach. I was researching a lot to see how much coaches costed on average. And then I wanted to find a home, of course, like find an organization that fit well as far as location and show availability, things like that. So yeah. Now I'm here in the INBA. So
Now, what was your first IMBA show?
That one was the Grand Canyon Classic. So that was in
Okay.
Phoenix. That was the first INBA show I did. Um, and I remember competing with Brian. And, he beat me in that show, so he got first. I got second by 1 point. So that was
Okay.
another one that irked me a little bit. And like 1 point away from a pro card in my first show, but like you said, those things as competitive athletes, those just make us work harder and come back stronger the next time.
I remember in 2019 having the same feeling when we went to Greece. And, I felt good about the package I brought, and I just got second place. And I'm like, okay, I have got to win. Let me go back home and figure out what I need to do. And that was the year that I won my first Natural Olympia.
Yep, nice. That's it.
Had to get that win. Now,
Absolutely.
I heard you say you competed bodybuilding first. What
Yeah.
was your progression to classic? Did you do men's physique at any point?
No, I've never done men's physique. It's interesting. I just had a lot of compliments from people at the gym or comments, just with my shape and structure, I guess, because I've always had pretty big legs. I mean, I've always trained them, so my legs have been good. And everybody's telling me like, hey, like you should compete in this kind of category. And I'm like, what's the difference between that and
Right.
this? And like, no, you would be your physique is perfect for this category. And I'm like, okay, well maybe I'll try it. So
Okay,
that's
so break it down for people who don't know. What is the difference between classic physique and open men's bodybuilding?
yeah. So I'm generally thinking just from a shape standpoint, you still want to have, good wide, broad shoulders, good chest, but then it's almost more of an athletic look where your waist is tapered down a little bit more, but then you still have size in the legs. So you're
Mhm.
kind of at that tapered hourglass kind of shape in a sense where you're wider up top, small waist, and then you still have the size at the bottom. Some bodybuilders, again, especially with natural competitors, we're all built a little different as far as bone structure and shape, but you
Mhm.
might see somebody that just carries more muscle on their frame. They're a lot thicker, more dense muscles. They could still have a tapered waist depending on how they're built, but usually you're seeing, those larger guys on stage even when they're lean. Um, I almost compare it to like if you're watching football, you might have a running back versus, a lineman or a fullback, somebody that's smaller, faster, but they still have
Mhm.
muscle in their frame versus that thicker, bigger guy that can, just pound the line or do something like that. And again, that's my sports background coming into play with that.
Okay, so then to that point, what was your position in football?
I did play wide receiver, running back, and cornerback.
So there it
So
is.
those were all my positions. Like,
And there it is. So now we can correlate those 2, right?
yeah, absolutely.
Okay, so talk to me about your first win at the Natural Olympia.
Yeah, that was a big one because I remember, that year my grandmother had passed away, and we had her funeral the week before the Natural Olympia.
Mm,
Um, I remember that just being tough. It's like one of those things where you're already right there.
right.
So it's like, do you keep going or do you stop at that point?
Mhm,
Um, and I do remember, kind of having a little phase where the stress of that and the emotion of that got to me. And, with usually I go to food, you're depleted, you've been in prep for a long time. And, I had a point where I just like went off my diet for like a couple of days pretty bad. And that was right around the time of her funeral, like I said, about a week and a half before. And, Philip was my coach at the time. And we communicate really well. We had a really good relationship, and we still do. So I'm grateful for that because I just had to tell him like right away, like, hey, this is what happened. This is what I ate. Like I went way off. I've been eating like crap the last couple of days. Just a lot of stress. I don't know if I should compete next week, but I knew we had check-ins coming up. So he's like, that's okay. Don't worry about it. Let's just take a look at you when you check in, see how your body responds to everything. And if we need to make any changes, we can. Otherwise, just stick with the plan we had in place, and don't freak out. Like, don't do anything
Right.
crazy.
Right.
So, um, there's times when maybe our body needs it, because I feel like
Right.
I responded pretty well still without having to do anything drastic after that. But
Hmm.
obviously emotionally, with anything with family like that, when somebody passes, like, that's a heavy toll. And it had already been a pretty solid year of competing for us. I've been in prep for a long time that year, because I started competing. I did my first pro show in July, and then I
Okay.
think I Mr. America in October, and then the Natural Olympia that year. And I'd gotten second place at Mr. America that year. And I wasn't expecting to place super high at that show, or even to win the Natural Olympia. That was my first year as a pro. So
Mm.
the expectation wasn't necessarily that high. I had been at the Natural Olympia as an amateur the year before, and saw the quality of athletes on there with Brandon Lirio, and Richie Lopez, and Tamer Barraquet, and all those guys. So I knew they would be coming back to some extent. And I'm like, okay, well,
Yeah.
if I can just place top 5, that would make me happy. And when I got second at the Mr. America, that definitely gave me a confidence boost, as far as like,
Yeah.
okay, I do belong up here with these guys. So then actually winning it, of course, was very unexpected. I was obviously elated about it. And that imposter syndrome kicks in, because even before that, I wasn't necessarily sure if I was ready this first year to be on
Right.
top.
Right.
Like, okay, I won, great, but was it just this one-off chance, or can I do it again?
Right. Right.
So
So what
yeah.
do you think gave you the edge that year to win?
um
Well, those guys are solid. Like
yeah.
you know me, I'm paying attention to the classic physique guys, and they all are solid athletes. So what gave you that edge to edge them out?
um I mean, for myself, looking at everybody, like, I know how close it is, and I can really only go off of feedback from other people and the judges at that point, like when I'm seeing what they're actually looking at. And
Mhm.
most of the comments were around my shape. Like, you have good shape, you present yourself well, you're a great poser. um I think, I don't know if this necessarily helped me, but I was taller than some of the other competitors that at least had won the previous year. Um, so maybe that gave me a little bit of an advantage as far as size, having a slightly larger frame with my height.
Mhm.
Uh, those are things I could assume too. But I've gotten the most compliments just about my shape in general. I have a pretty small waist. Waist gets down to 27, 28 when I'm lean for a show. And my legs, that's always been a strong suit of mine, just from the years of sports and training.
Now, as far as any feedback about improvements, what did judges tell you to improve?
A couple of the judges told me nothing, which is the worst thing.
Okay.
I was like, you got to
Right.
be,
Well, you need
I
something. We
can't,
need something.
right? Like, I need something. But then, I did get other feedback, like, my chest, maybe bringing that up, which I think it's just a matter of balance, because I feel like my chest is a pretty strong point, but maybe building my upper chest, I probably have better critiques on myself than some of the feedback I got. I'm like, no, I think I need to work on this, and I need to work on that. So I would probably just say my upper body, upper chest, shoulders. Those are areas that I still want to continue to develop, just to balance out my physique a little better. I think that would just give me even more of a classic look if I'm able to continue developing my upper body a little bit more. So, um, and then I always look at, like, glutes and hamstrings. That's always a point where, if you're winning a show from the back, it's not just your upper body that you're engaging. You got
Right.
to have the shape and be able to engage your glutes and hamstrings as well, so we can see those lines there, even in.
Absolutely.
So, and those, at least for me, are areas that are harder to maybe not develop, but to contract, because I'm not used to squeezing my glutes and hamstrings on a. I don't do that every day.
I can't say that I do that either. However, in developing my physique, like one of the things that, and I have this in front of me literally every day. We have video of, the Natural Olympia and other shows that myself and my athletes have competed in over the last few years, and some of the stuff we do in the gym now. But every single time I see myself walk across the stage, I'm critiquing. Now, you can be
Yeah.
better there, you can be better there. So that's in front of me all the time. I'm always looking at what can I do a little bit better. And I know we're our own worst and best critics, but
uh,
as an athlete, you're always looking to improve. Always.
yeah, big
So
time.
yeah, I get it. Now, what has been your biggest challenge in getting on the stage? I mean, I know family stuff happens, but just kind of in terms of, because I talk to athletes all the time about, okay, this is what you can expect. However, life happens, and this is what you will have to navigate. But what was your biggest challenge in getting to the stage? Maybe the first time, but also as we keep going.
Yeah. I think it's the longevity of it because it's such a long process, and you don't always see change right away.
Right,
So, and again, we're our own worst critics, like you mentioned before. So, when I'm looking at myself and I'm checking in and sending photos to my coach, I don't always see what he sees.
right.
Um, and sometimes, those changes, those more extreme changes, don't happen until you're, 5, 4, 3 weeks out from the show, where you start noticing those actual changes. So you could be
Yep.
7, 8 weeks out from the show and still be like, man, like, I don't know if I'm going to be ready. Like maybe
Right,
no, like just stay the course. And then at that time, you're starting to feel probably a little tired, because you're starting to drop those calories even more. So I think it's more the longevity of it that makes it difficult to get on stage. And it's more so that week or two before the peak week, because that's when the uncertainty kicks in. When you get to peak week, like, okay, I should be ready now, and then you're just getting through
right.
that leading into the show, so you're good at that point. But it's yeah, it's more that long process, whether you're doing a 12, 16, or 20-week prep, depending on how far you off from your stage weight, and just continuing that without knowing what's underneath it all.
Right, right. Now I've taken a year and almost a half now to kind of work on what is Alondra doing next. And I still don't know exactly what Alondra's doing next, but in the meantime, it's still just a progression of still always trying to improve and always trying to, set up myself for a good dieting season and shredding season. And that just never stops. That just never stops. Now, tell me what you feel your biggest win was.
Oh man. In regards to like shows,
Yep,
oh man. Well, it's got to be one of the three natural Olympias for
it's got to
sure.
be one of them.
Um, I I would say the biggest was the last one. Um, and I feel like in most cases, the last one is usually going to be somebody's biggest one. That's my opinion. But um, again, dealing with family issues, like my mother had passed away this past year,
Mhm.
in August, so that was another big one in that regard, of course, and had more time to make a decision, versus the first year I won when my grandmother had passed. So there was almost more of a, all right, I may not compete this year at all.
Right,
I
right.
hadn't done a show yet at all. I was working with Philip for the first half of that year too, and my mother was having more health issues with her health just declining. So there was always that in the back of my head the entire year, where I'm like, I don't know if I want to do a show before the Natural Olympia. I just kind of want to see how things pan out, make sure my mom's okay. And then when she passed, it was like, obviously I'm dealing with the family stuff first. But there's still this initial goal that I had in front of me to finish.
Right.
Um, so, once I made that decision, I was probably more 100% than I had ever been about any show I had done in the past. Like,
Okay,
I don't think I missed anything. I
okay.
was posing most days. My food was on point. I had a lot of like support and help with friends, and just keeping me going and making sure I'm staying on top of my meals, and I'm I'm still going to work every day. Um, doing all the workouts, doing all the cardio, doing all the sprints. Like I was just very militant about everything. And, it gave me a different level of focus where I'm like, okay, like I'm not going to leave any rocks unturned here. If I lose, I lose, but like, I'm at least going to give this one my best compared to the other years where I might have had, those slip ups
Yeah.
as we,
Yeah.
but, this was definitely one of my better years as far as preparation going into the show and, feeling my absolute best, physically getting into it.
Well, I sitting at the judges table, we're looking for you to come in with your best, right? And then also, if there's anybody up there that can show themselves better. And
Right.
of course, everybody's gunning for you because you already had 2 under your belt. So, for me, I'm sitting there like, "Okay, Derek, let me see what you got. Let me see what you got. Okay,
Yeah.
well, you looking pretty good." And
Yeah.
nobody was able to show themselves better. It's like, "Hey, all right, well, that's 3. That's
Yeah.
amazing."
Yeah, for sure. I think I know that too as a judge as well. I've judged a few shows and, I'm thinking the same way you are. I'm thinking I have to look better than I did last year. If I look the same, then I left the door open for somebody else to beat.
Exactly,
Even if
exactly.
better than they did, if the judge sees me and says, Derek doesn't look as good as he did last year, that just opened the door because it's a new face.
Yeah,
And, I'm definitely aware of that going into it. So I know I had to improve on what my physique was the previous 2 years. And
exactly.
as long as I did that, again, I knew it was going to be very tough for somebody to beat me. So I just had to focus on what I was bringing to the table. I knew there was going to be some new competition there.
Mhm,
And when competition, things are definitely opened up more, I believe. So,
mhm.
um, but yeah, handle business again. And, I'm definitely thankful for that. And, we'll see what the future holds, from there.
Now this all the posing that you were doing led you into actually being a posing coach as well, yes?
Yes, yes, absolutely. I had actually hired a posing coach and he ended up being my coach for my prep the last 8 to 10 weeks leading into the Natural Olympia this past year. Uh,
Okay.
so I had worked with him previously, about a year or two before that with the posing,
Mhm.
and seeing how he ran his business as a posing coach, I was like, oh well, I get questions all the time. Maybe this is something I could do as well, because there's a lot of guys that take themselves through prep, whether male or female competitors. Maybe they're trainers, but they need help with the posing part because it's
Right,
a very detailed part of what we do and how we present our physiques and even choreographing routines for
right, right.
certain categories. That takes a lot of time when when we're not necessarily having the mental capacity to think about stuff outside of
Oh,
that.
yeah, for sure.
So that's been something I've developed a skill in as well and gotten better at choreographing routines for people. I don't get a ton of requests because I don't post a lot about doing that part of my business, but through word of mouth, I have people reach out to me, and I end up doing a lot of routines for people to get them ready for their shows. So yeah, I've definitely enjoyed that
Nice.
part of the sport.
Very good. I mean, that is a skill because posing, the presentation of your beautiful body can either make or break you. And
Yeah,
then posing routines, that's another level of complexity, especially if you are new to this and you have no idea how to put that together and display the physique. That's a huge skill. So that's amazing. I know I am not a posing routine choreographer. No. No, that is not. I can pose figure, I can
sure.
put girls in bikini poses, wellness, but when it comes to physique posing, no,
Yeah,
can't do.
yeah. There's a whole process to that too.
Yeah, I maybe you'll have to let me in on a few secrets at some point.
Oh yeah, yeah, absolutely.
Your support, you mentioned your support system for this last show. Who was in your corner? Because I know, again, when it comes to this particular sport, sometimes people have great support, and sometimes the people closest to them are the ones that are like not actually supportive. Um, who was your support team?
Yeah. Well, my girlfriend was a big support because she was there with me, like helping me
Mhm.
with helping me cook things and stay prepared with my busy schedule, even though she was busy as well. I had this timeline and deadline, of course, so she was a huge help for that and support there. Making sure I got up to do my runs when I needed to in the morning, and um, yeah, even would run with me sometimes to make sure I was getting it done. So she'd
That's
go do
awesome.
with me after work, after a busy day. She would come to the gym and work out with me to make sure I got through my workouts. So she was huge there. And then, of course, my family, brothers, sisters. I have two older sisters, my dad. Um, that was one of the questions they asked me because they know what I do as an athlete and a competitor. And after things kind of settled with my mom after the funeral and everything, they were asking me if I was still going to compete. Because if I was, then they wanted to show up. So that was a big like, oh, you're gonna come this year because they haven't been there for the first one. They weren't there for the second one just because of traveling.
Okay.
So knowing that they were gonna show up and make plans to go was like everything. So I was like, okay, I have my whole family coming to this event this time when usually it's me by myself with maybe one or two friends in the stands, like immediate friends. Having my family there and knowing they were going to be there was huge.
Yeah,
So
that's awesome.
yeah, that was like all my support there. And like you said, that's a big thing. That can make or break how well you do. That consistency, that stress that builds. They've always supported me with that, but they also see how committed I am to it too. Sometimes you have
Sure.
to show it, and then they're like, okay, well, he's serious about this.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Exactly. No, that's awesome. That's awesome.
Yeah.
So what's next for Derek? What do you have on the books, at least as far as competing this year, but just in the
Yeah.
future, what's next?
Yeah, well, I haven't told many people, but as far as competing, I will be taking this year off altogether. So I don't have any intention to compete this year, um, for a lot of reasons, I would say. Definitely want to be more available to visit and spend time with family,
Mhm.
um, and be able to make time for that to travel, especially being out of state. So I'm away from family a little bit more. So to be more available for that. And of course, for business, building my brand as a coach, as a trainer, I want to be able to put time into that. And that takes a lot of time. If we're competing, we don't always have the time or energy to build a business,
Tell me
build,
about it. I know.
you know, very
I
well.
know all about that.
Yeah.
Yes.
I've done that where I'm competing at the same time that I'm coaching my athletes and they have shows coming up. And it's a lot to do when you're depleted and you're trying to get them ready for a peak week and show up for them. And then you have a show 2 weeks later. It's,
Have you competed with your athletes? Because I made that mistake one time. No, actually, I've done that a few times, but I made the mistake one time. I had 12 athletes on stage, and I was on stage too. And I was like, "What
I,
were you thinking? What were you thinking?" That was
yeah,
probably the worst experience for me on stage. They loved it. Everybody was great, but that was just way too much output of energy. Just anybody who's listening, don't do that.
yeah, I could imagine. I haven't done that yet. I thought about it.
Right.
uh,
Yeah.
when with Philip coaching me, we had done a couple shows at the same time, together. So it was cool for me. Like you said, it's cool for the athlete, but it's a lot on the coach.
Well, 12 is just too many. I've done several shows with 2 or 3, maybe 4, and that's fine, but 12, that was just over the top.
Oh yeah,
Way
yeah,
too many. Okay, well, good. Thank you so much for joining me. I appreciate your time and loved your energy, and I found out a few new things about you that I didn't know. So thank you.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, thanks for having me on. It's always good talking to you.
All right. Well, thank you for joining us, and be sure to like, share, and subscribe, and we will see you next time.